Nalan had lived alone for so long that silence had become her closest companion. The desert around her was wide and open, stretching in every direction, and she knew every sound it made: the soft hiss of wind passing through dry grass, the gentle rustle of a lizard hiding under a rock, the distant call of an eagle. All these were familiar to her. Almost like old friends, she had grown used to the quiet. She trusted it. It was the one thing in her life that never tried to take anything away from her. Years ago, she had lived in a bustling Apache village, filled with laughter, stories, music, and people she loved. But life had changed, slowly at first, then sharply, and without warning. When her husband passed away after a long sickness, Nalan felt as if the world around her had lost its color. Everything familiar reminded her of him: his favorite path by the river, his tools resting by the fire pit, the stories he used to share at night. Every corner of the village made her heart heavy. Eventually, she chose to live away from everyone, believing that peace lived only in solitude. She had walked far into the desert and set up her home where the land rose gently toward the mountains. There she built a small tent made from sturdy hide and strong poles. It stood facing east so she could greet the sun every morning. She kept only what she needed: her husband's old blanket, a few clay pots, a small knife for cutting herbs, and a pouch filled with seeds. Her life was simple. She woke with the first light, collected water before the heat rose, tended to her small garden, cooked her food slowly, and rested when the day grew long. Though she lived alone, Nalan was never careless. She moved with awareness, listening to the desert the way some people listen to music. She could tell from the rhythm of footsteps whether they belonged to a deer or something else. She knew where the earth was soft, and where hidden stones could twist an ankle. She understood where the cool shade would fall in the evening, and how to read the changing colors of the sky. This knowledge had been passed down from her elders, and she carried it with pride. Even in her solitude, she felt connected to her people through their teachings. Many people in nearby towns and settlements had heard stories about her. Some said she was a mysterious woman who lived with the spirits of the desert. Others claimed she had great wisdom and could heal the sick with plants. A few believed she simply preferred quiet over company. But none of these people truly knew her, because very few had ever seen her. She avoided crowded places and kept a respectful distance from strangers. Her world was small but complete. Nalan found comfort in little tasks. She would carefully grind dried herbs with smooth stones, humming softly to herself. She stitched worn fabric with patience. She kept her tent clean, her tools organized, and her fire pit ready for cool evenings. Sometimes she would sit outside at night, watching the stars. She spoke to her husband in her thoughts, telling him about the day, the weather, and the movements of the animals nearby. She wondered sometimes if he could hear her. It was a gentle thought, not a sad one. Time had softened her grief, though it never fully left. Despite her connection to the land, living alone meant responsibility. No one was there to bring water if she fell ill. No one could help gather food if she became too weak. She learned to be strong, even on days when her heart felt heavy. But this strength did not make her unkind. She still offered water to passing animals and whispered blessings for travelers she saw from afar. She simply chose not to walk toward them. One late afternoon, when the sun was low and the sky glowed like burning amber, Nalan prepared to walk down to the dry creek bed. It was her habit to collect water just before sunset, when the heat of the day began to ease. She carried 2 clay pots tied securely with rope and walked at a steady pace. Her feet knew the way by memory. As she walked, she observed the patterns around her. The soft wind pressed against her loose clothing. Shadows stretched long over the golden sand. A group of small birds darted past her, calling to one another in quick, excited tones. She noticed their unusual behavior but thought little of it. Birds often grew lively at dusk. When she reached the creek bed, she paused, lowering one pot to the ground. She knelt and dipped the other into the shallow water that shimmered like glass under the fading light. As she filled the pot, she felt the familiar coolness rise through the clay. She lifted it slowly, careful not to spill a single drop. Then she heard something she did not expect. It wasn't the sound of an animal. It wasn't the natural voice of the desert. It was softer, uneven, like someone trying to breathe through pain. Nalan's body stilled immediately. Her senses sharp. She listened again. The sound came from behind a cluster of rocks further down the creek bed. She waited, letting the desert settle around her. The breathy sound came again, broken and faint. Her instincts told her to be cautious. Strangers could bring trouble. But something deeper within her, something human, compassionate, and almost instinctive, would not let her walk away. She moved slowly toward the rocks, each step measured and quiet. As she approached, the shape of a man came into view. He was lying on his side, his face pale, his hat fallen nearby. Dust clung to his clothes. His horse stood a few feet away, restless and confused, but unharmed. The man looked exhausted, his breath shallow. He opened his eyes briefly, but they clouded over, unable to focus. Nalan could see he was in no condition to move on his own. He wasn't a danger. He was simply someone in need. She stood there for a long moment, the warm breeze brushing her face. Helping him would bring a stranger into her quiet world, even if only for a short time. It was not something she ever planned to do, yet leaving him there felt impossible. Her heart made the choice her mind hesitated to make. She set down her pot and knelt beside him. "You must wake," she said gently. Her voice was calm, steady. The man's eyes fluttered, but he didn't speak. She touched his shoulder lightly to measure his reaction. He didn't pull away. He could barely stay conscious. Nalan let out a slow breath, gathering her resolve. She knew this decision would change her routine, her days, maybe even her peace, but she also knew that life, even in the desert, was sacred. If someone crossed her path needing help, it was her responsibility to offer it. She looked toward the long stretch of land that lay between the creek and her tent. She would have to carry him. It would take strength, balance, and patience. But she had all three. The desert had shaped her into a woman who could endure many things. She rose to her feet, brushed sand from her hands, and prepared herself. Her long years of solitude were about to shift, even if only for a brief moment. She didn't know who this stranger was, or why he had fallen. But she knew she couldn't leave him behind. The desert chose this moment for her, and she would answer it with compassion. And so, with the sun dipping low and the quiet evening settling around her, Nalan took her first step toward helping the man who had unexpectedly entered her world. The evening light was fading fast when Nalan knelt beside the unconscious cowboy. She studied his face carefully. His skin was dusty and warm from the sun, and his breathing came in soft, uneven waves. His hat lay a little distance away, half buried in the sand, and his horse nudged the ground as if confused by its rider's stillness. Nalan could tell the man had been through something difficult, though she did not know what. His clothes were worn, his boots scuffed, and his shirt torn in places that suggested he had been traveling for a long time. Nalan placed her hand gently on his arm. His skin felt warm but not dangerously so. She whispered softly, hoping to bring him back to awareness. But he did not respond. She realized he was more exhausted than injured. Perhaps he had been riding for days without rest. Perhaps he had lost his way. Whatever had happened, he was now helpless in the desert, and she was the only person nearby who could help him. The thought of taking a stranger into her tent made her heart tighten in a small knot. For years she had avoided people, even kind ones. Solitude had become her shield. She liked the predictability of her days, the stillness of her nights. Bringing someone into her space, even someone barely conscious, felt like opening a door she had kept tightly closed for a long time. Still, she could not walk away. Her teachings, her memories, and her own gentle spirit would not allow that. She moved around him slowly, checking for any sign of pain. His leg was twisted in an uncomfortable position, so she carefully shifted it straight. He let out a faint sigh, but still did not wake fully. His hand was loosely curled near his chest, his fingers trembling slightly. She noticed his face carried a kind expression, even in sleep. His eyebrows were relaxed, not knotted with worry or fear. There was something peaceful about him, as if he was a man who did not wish harm on anyone. She rose to her feet and walked toward his horse, speaking softly so it would not spook. The animal lifted its head and watched her with dark, curious eyes. She reached out her hand slowly. The horse sniffed her fingers, then allowed her to stroke its muzzle. Animals were honest. They showed their feelings clearly. This horse did not seem afraid of her. That was a good sign. The horse had a small saddlebag tied securely on its side. Nalin did not take anything from it, but she checked to see if the bag was damaged or if anything had spilled. It appeared untouched. She also noticed a canteen hanging from the saddle, which made her feel relieved. Water would be helpful for the journey back to her tent, especially with an extra person to care for. When she returned to the cowboy, he stirred slightly, his eyelids fluttering open for a brief moment. His gaze was unfocused, drifting like a person lost between dreaming and waking. Nalin leaned close enough for him to hear her voice, but not so close as to startle him. "You are safe," she said gently. "I will help you." He blinked slowly, his dry lips parting slightly, but no words came out. His eyes drifted closed again. Nalin knew she had only a short window of cooler evening air before the night chill began. She had to move him soon. She crouched down and placed her arms carefully beneath his shoulders. She was smaller than he was, but she was strong from years of self-reliance. The desert taught its own form of strength, quiet, steady, and determined. With patient effort, she lifted him enough to slide his arm over her shoulder. His head rested against her briefly, his breath warm but faint. She adjusted her stance, grounding her feet firmly in the sand. The walk back would be slow, but she could manage it. They began their journey step by step. The cowboy was mostly limp, offering little help, but occasionally he shifted slightly, as if trying to steady himself. Nalin moved with care, stopping every few steps to catch her breath or adjust her hold. The desert air around them grew cooler, the sky deepening into soft shades of gold and purple. As they walked, she spoke in a low, soothing voice. "You will be warm soon. I have herbs that will help you rest. Water waiting. You must stay awake if you can." He responded with a soft sound, something between a sigh and a whisper. His voice held no fear, only tiredness. Nalin continued talking, hoping her voice would keep him anchored to awareness. The journey felt longer than usual. The pots of water she'd left behind at the creek bed would have to wait until morning. Her main focus was getting him to safety. When they finally reached the small rise where her tent stood, Nalin paused to catch her breath. The familiar sight of her home brought her a sense of comfort, as if the desert itself was welcoming them. Her tent stood gently curved under the rising moonlight, its shadow stretching across the sand. A small fire pit lay nearby, waiting to be lit. In the distance, she could hear the faint chirping of night insects beginning their songs. The world felt calm again, as if holding its breath for what would come next. Nalin guided the cowboy inside, easing him down onto the soft layer of blankets she kept neatly arranged. She made sure his head rested comfortably, then stepped outside to gather kindling for a small fire. The night air was growing cool, and warmth would help him recover. As she built the fire, she reflected on the strange turn her evening had taken. She had gone to the creek for water, expecting nothing unusual. Yet now, there was a stranger lying inside her home. Someone she had never met. Someone from a world very different from hers. She felt a strange blend of worry and calm. It was unfamiliar, yet something about this moment felt right, as if it was meant to happen. After lighting the fire, Nalin returned inside with a water bowl. The cowboy stirred slightly as she lifted his head just enough for him to sip. His lips were dry and cracked, but he swallowed slowly, grateful even if he could not express it in words. She offered him only a few sips. Too much water too quickly could upset him. Then she dampened a cloth and gently wiped the dust from his face. As she worked, she studied him more closely. He appeared to be around her age, perhaps a little older. His hair was sun-bleached and a bit tangled, and his beard was rough, showing he had not shaved in a while. Yet there was something gentle in his features. He seemed like a person who had lived through quiet struggles, Not the loud kind that filled the world with trouble, but the inner kind that weighed on a person's heart. Nalin whispered, "Rest now. You are safe here." He exhaled deeply, as if releasing a long-held breath. His body relaxed into the blankets, his shoulders losing their tension. She placed a folded cloth under his head and covered him with her light-woven blanket. For a moment, she just sat beside him, listening to his breathing. It was still uneven, but not as shallow as before. Outside, the fire crackled softly, sending a warm glow through the tent flap. Nalin leaned closer to the cowboy, checking his forehead with the back of her hand. He felt tired, but not dangerously ill. Most of his suffering came from exhaustion. A night of rest, warmth, and care would help him recover. But even as she comforted him, a quiet curiosity grew inside her. Who was he? Why had he been out here alone? What path had led him across her quiet world? She knew she would not get answers tonight. She did not need them yet. The desert had brought him to her for a reason, and she trusted that truth. For now, she simply watched over him as the night embraced the land, her gentle heart guiding her in the silence. The night passed quietly, and by morning, the soft light of dawn crept into the tent. Nalin opened her eyes the moment she heard the faint shift of blankets beside her. For a second, she wondered if she had dreamed the stranger she carried home. But when she turned her head, she saw him lying there, breathing more steadily than the night before. His face relaxed in a natural rest. The cool morning air flowed through the tent, making the fire's last embers glow softly. Nalin rose quietly, careful not to startle him, and stepped outside to greet the day. The sun was still low on the horizon, painting the desert in soft shades of silver and peach. She closed her eyes for a moment and thanked the morning for bringing light and peace. Then she walked to her garden, checking the plants she had tended for years, small patches of herbs, a few desert vegetables, and a cluster of wildflowers she kept, because they reminded her of her husband's smile. She knelt to gather a few herbs she needed to make a warm drink that would help the cowboy regain strength. As she worked, she thought about him. There was something kind in the way he had sighed when she gave him water last night, as if he trusted her. Without even knowing her name, she did not understand why this feeling of responsibility for him had taken root inside her so quickly, but she accepted it. The desert had ways of guiding her to people who needed help, even when she wasn't looking for them. When she returned to the tent with the herbs, she found the cowboy awake but very weak. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling as if he was trying to remember where he was. Nalin walked in slowly so he would not feel startled. "You are awake," she said gently. He turned his head toward her, his movements slow. His dry lips curved into a faint, grateful smile. "Where?" He tried to speak, but his voice was too soft. "Do not try to talk yet," she said kindly. "Your body is still tired. Rest your voice." He nodded slightly, showing that he understood. Nalin prepared the warm drink by heating water and mixing in the herbs she had chosen. The air inside the tent began to fill with a gentle scent, something earthy, calming, and comforting. When it was ready, she brought the bowl to him and helped him sit up enough to drink. He held the bowl with trembling hands, but she supported it, so he would not spill. He took slow sips. After a few moments, he lowered the bowl and whispered, "Thank you." His voice was quiet but steady enough to show that he was gaining strength. Nalin set the bowl aside and sat cross-legged beside him, giving him space but staying close enough to help if he needed it. "You wandered far into the desert," she said softly. "Your horse was still nearby. You were very tired." He blinked a few times, as if trying to piece together the missing parts of his memory. I remember riding," he said slowly. Then, everything became blurry. Nalin nodded. "You must not push yourself to remember. Rest will help your mind become clear again." He looked around the tent, noticing the tidy arrangement of blankets, herbs, and carefully placed tools. His gaze rested on her for a moment longer, filled with quiet curiosity. "You saved me," he said, his voice carrying a sense of wonder. "I don't even know your name." "My name is Nalin," she replied. He repeated it softly, letting the sound settle in his mind. "I'm Elias," he said. His name felt gentle, like the quiet wind that passed through the desert at sunset. Nalin repeated it in her thoughts, testing how it felt. Elias. It suited him. For a while, they sat in silence while Elias rested. The desert outside grew brighter, and the warm light filtered into the tent. Nalin checked his forehead again. He was cooler now, no longer breathing shakily. Small signs of recovery gave her relief. Later, she stepped outside to prepare a simple meal. She mashed soft vegetables, mixed them with warm broth, and made a bowl that Elias could easily eat. When she returned, he tried to sit up again, but she gestured gently for him to stay still. "You must not rush your strength," she told him. "Your body needs time." He nodded with a small smile, and she helped him eat a few spoonfuls. Each time he swallowed, he seemed surprised at how comforting warm food felt. After he had eaten enough, she cleaned the bowl and settled beside him once more. Throughout the day, Elias drifted between light sleep and quiet wakefulness. Each time he opened his eyes, he seemed a little more aware of where he was and a little less lost. Nalin spoke to him in gentle tones, telling him about the desert, the morning weather, and the peacefulness of the place. She didn't ask him personal questions yet. She wanted him to recover without pressure. By late afternoon, Elias was awake long enough to hold a calm conversation. "You live alone?" he asked. Nalin nodded. "Yes, for many years. Isn't it lonely?" he said softly, with no judgment in his voice, only curiosity. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But the land keeps me company. The wind, the animals, the sky. They all speak in their own ways." Elias listened with respect. "It must take strength," he said. Nalin smiled faintly. "It takes patience more than strength." He smiled back, a small expression that lit his tired face. "Well, I'm grateful your patience led you to me." His words warmed her in a quiet, surprising way. She was not used to compliments or soft kindness from strangers. Most travelers who crossed the desert were focused on their journeys, not on gentle words. As the sun lowered in the sky and the air cooled, Nalin brought his horse closer to the tent so it could rest in shade. She gave it water and grass she had gathered earlier. The horse nudged her gently, as if thanking her. When she returned inside, Elias was watching her with calm eyes. "You took care of my horse too," he said, touched by her thoughtfulness. "Your horse is loyal," Nalin said. "It stayed near you. That tells me much about you." He looked down, a little shy at her words. "I try to be good to him," he said softly. "He's the one friend who hasn't given up on me." Nalin sensed sadness in his tone, not dangerous sadness, just the tired kind that comes from carrying burdens for too long. She did not press him to explain. Instead, she sat beside him quietly, letting the warm glow of the fire fill the space between them. As night settled in, the sky outside blossomed with stars. Elias turned his head slightly to see the pattern of light through the open tent flap. "It's beautiful here," he whispered. His words carried a humble truth. Nalin understood without needing details. Many people wandered the world searching for something they could not name. Maybe Elias was one of them. She placed a folded blanket near his feet, in case he grew cold during the night. "Sleep," she told him gently. "The desert heals slowly, but it heals well." Elias closed his eyes, his breathing soft and comfortable. Before drifting into sleep, he whispered, "Thank you, Nalin, for everything." She watched over him for a while, listening to the soft rhythm of his breath. She felt something unfamiliar but not unwelcome, a quiet connection forming between two people who had lived separate lives yet found comfort in the same moment of stillness. Nalin did not know what the coming days would bring, but she knew she would help him regain his strength. She knew she would continue offering kindness as long as he needed it. For the first time in years, she did not feel entirely alone. And that gentle change, surprising and steady, warmed her heart more than she expected. The next morning came with soft golden light spreading slowly across the desert, and Elias woke feeling stronger than he had in days. His body still felt tired, but the deep heaviness was finally lifting. He pushed himself up on his elbows, surprised at how comfortable the blankets felt beneath him. For a moment, he simply sat there, listening to the quiet rustling of the early breeze outside the tent. Nalin entered just then, carrying a bowl of warm tea made from fresh herbs. She walked slowly, so she wouldn't startle him. Elias looked up at her with a gentle smile, one that showed both gratitude and quiet admiration. "You look better today," she said softly. "I feel better," he replied. "Your herbs, your care, all of it helped." She handed him the bowl and watched as he took a careful sip. The warmth spread through him, calming his mind even more than his body. The flavor was earthy and soothing, like the desert itself had been turned into a drink. Nalin sat across from him, her hands folded in her lap. She did not speak right away. She waited for him to settle, for the tea to bring him comfort. She always moved with patience, as if every moment carried its own meaning. After a while, Elias spoke again. "I never expected to find help in the middle of nowhere," he said. I thought I would be alone." Nalin studied his face, seeing a mixture of regret and relief within him. She sensed that his journey had not only worn out his body but also weighed down his heart. "You are not alone anymore," she said gently. The words surprised both of them. They weren't meant to be bold or emotional, but they held an honesty that hung softly in the air. Elias looked at her with eyes that seemed a little brighter than before. Throughout the day, Elias slowly grew stronger. Nalin guided him outside the tent for short periods to stretch and breathe fresh air. She showed him where the sunlight fell gently in the morning and where cool shade formed by midday. The desert felt new to him, even though he had traveled through it before. When Nalin pointed out small plants or distant shapes of animals, he listened with a calm curiosity he had forgotten he possessed. At one point, Elias asked, "How do you know so much about this land?" She smiled faintly, her eyes drifting toward the hills. "My elders taught me when I was young. My husband taught me even more. And after he passed, the desert became my teacher." Elias nodded, understanding the meaning behind her words. There was love in her memories, but also pain. He didn't ask for details. She didn't need to relive them for him to understand. Later in the afternoon, Elias insisted on helping with small tasks to show his appreciation. Even though Nalin worried he might push himself too hard, she allowed him to gather small sticks for the evening fire, nothing heavy, nothing too far. As he moved around slowly, she watched carefully, ready to step in if he lost his balance. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "I know," Elias replied, bending carefully to pick up another stick. "But I want to. You've done more for me than I can ever repay. Let me feel useful again." The way he said it made Nalin's heart soften. She realized he wasn't just trying to help her, he was trying to rebuild something within himself. As the sun dropped lower, the sky shifted into beautiful shades of orange, pink, and gold. Elias sat near the fire pit, arranging the sticks he had gathered. Nalin knelt beside him, adding dried leaves that would catch flame easily. Together, they built the fire, their hands moving with a natural rhythm, as if they were two people who had been working side by side for years rather than days. When the fire began to glow, Elias leaned back, watching the flames dance. "This place, it feels peaceful," he said quietly. "I didn't realize how much I needed peace until now." Nalin looked at him for a long moment. "Peace is something you must choose to keep," she said. "It cannot be forced. It cannot be chased. It grows when you allow yourself to be still." Elias took in her words like someone who had been thirsty for wisdom. He turned his gaze to the distant horizon. "I think I've spent most of my life running," he admitted. "Not from danger, but from myself. From my own worries. My own mistakes." Nalin listened silently, her expression gentle and open. Elias continued slowly, speaking not to gain sympathy, but because he finally felt safe enough to speak his truth. I wanted a quiet life. But trouble always seemed to find me even when I didn't want it. I walked away from places hoping things would change, but nothing ever did. Nalin reached out and placed a steady hand on his arm. Her touch was light, supportive, and warm. "You are here now," she said. "The desert has given you a chance to rest. And rest can change a person more than anything else." Her words brought a calm to him he had not felt in years. He let out a slow breath, the tightness in his chest easing. Nalin's presence felt like a shelter from the world he had been running from. As evening turned into night, they shared a simple meal. Elias ate slowly, but with real appetite this time. Nalin told him small stories about the desert. Stories her husband used to tell her, the kind that were gentle, full of lessons, and shaped by the wind and the land. Elias listened as if every word was a treasure. After they ate, Elias helped her clean the bowls. He worked slowly, careful not to drop anything. When their hands brushed accidentally, both felt a small spark of warmth. Not romantic, not rushed. Just a quiet sense of connection. Nalin noticed the way Elias watched the stars afterward. He looked peaceful, almost childlike, as if seeing the night sky for the first time. She stood beside him, letting the silence wrap gently around them. "This place," Elias whispered. "It feels like a new beginning." Nalin looked at him softly. "Every sunrise is a new beginning, but it is up to you to decide what to do with it." Her words stayed with him long after she spoke them. They sat near the fire until it softened into glowing embers. The desert air grew cool, brushing against them like a soft blanket. Elias felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time: hope. Before he went inside the tent to rest, Elias turned to Nalin and said quietly, "I don't know how long I should stay, but I'm grateful for every moment." Nalin nodded. "Stay until your strength returns. The desert will tell you when it is time." Elias smiled, not the tired smile he wore before, but one filled with calm and clarity. He stepped inside the tent, settled onto the blankets, and closed his eyes with a peace he hadn't known in years. Outside, Nalin stayed by the fire for a while, looking up at the moon. She felt the gentle shift of something new in her world. She didn't fear it. She didn't question it. She simply accepted it, the way one accepts a soft breeze or a passing cloud. The desert, for the first time in years, did not feel empty. Morning came with a soft glow spreading over the desert, and Elias opened his eyes to a calm he had not felt in many years. He lay quietly for a moment, listening to the slow crackle of the small fire outside and the soft rustle of Nalin's movements. Something inside him felt new, lighter, clearer, almost as if the desert had washed away a heaviness he had been carrying for too long. When he stepped outside the tent, Nalin was kneeling near her garden, checking the plants with gentle hands. She looked up when she heard him, her dark hair moving slightly in the morning breeze. Her expression softened into a quiet smile. "You slept well," she said, noticing the rested look in his eyes. "I did," Elias replied. "Better than I have in a long time." Nalin nodded, pleased. The desert gives good rest when the heart allows it. Elias walked slowly to the patch of shade beside her and sat down. They shared a simple breakfast of roasted roots and warm tea. As they ate, the peaceful silence between them felt comfortable, not empty. Elias watched the sunlight stretch across the land, touching the rocks and sand with a soft morning glow. Everything felt calm, almost sacred. After breakfast, Elias stood carefully. "I think I'm strong enough to walk a little farther today," he said. "You may try," Nalin replied gently. "But listen to your body. Do not force yourself." With Nalin beside him, he walked a little way from the tent. His steps were steady, and though he still felt a bit weak, he could feel his strength returning. They walked toward a small rise that overlooked a wide stretch of desert. When they reached the top, Elias paused, taking in the open view. The land stretched endlessly before them, painted in soft colors by the rising sun. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Nalin nodded, her gaze warm. This view helped me through many lonely days, she said softly. It reminded me that the world is larger than my sorrow. Elias looked at her with quiet understanding. You've lived with great strength, he said. I can see that now. Nalin didn't respond right away. She simply breathed in the cool morning air. Her silence spoke more than words. Elias sensed that she had lived through pain but had learned to find peace in simple things: the sky, the wind, the steady earth beneath her feet. As the day went on, Elias helped with small tasks around the tent. He fetched water from the creek, carried light bundles of herbs, and swept the area where they prepared food. Nalin watched with something like pride. Each step he took with confidence showed her that he was healing not just in body, but also in spirit. Later in the afternoon, they sat near the fire pit, weaving small grass ropes. The quiet work brought a sense of calm. Elias glanced at Nalin, then looked down at the rope he was making. I've been thinking, he began softly. When I leave here, I want to live differently from before. Nalin looked at him, waiting for him to continue. I've spent so much time running from place to place, he said. I kept searching for peace, but I never stayed still long enough to find it. I never allowed myself to breathe, to rest, to listen. Nalin's eyes softened. Sometimes, the heart needs stillness more than anything. Elias nodded. Being here, with you, it showed me that I've been chasing the wrong things. He didn't say it to flatter her. He spoke with genuine honesty, the kind that comes only after deep reflection. Nalin felt a gentle warmth settle inside her chest. You have a kind heart, Elias, she said. You only need to trust it more. He smiled at her, a slow, grateful smile. I will. I promise. The afternoon passed with calm rhythm. They prepared food, tended to the horse, and rested under the shade as the desert heat softened. Elias found himself noticing little details in Nalin's daily habits: the way she listened before she spoke, the careful way she handled her tools, the quiet devotion she had toward the land. It humbled him, it inspired him. As the sun began to set, Elias stood outside the tent, looking at the horizon. Nalin joined him quietly. Tomorrow, Elias said softly, I think I'll be ready to travel again. Nalin felt a small ache in her heart, not painful. Just a gentle reminder that every meeting in life eventually leads to a farewell. She looked at him with calm understanding. You must follow your path, she said, and the desert will guide you. He turned toward her, his eyes warm but touched with sadness. I will never forget what you did for me, he said. You gave me more than care. You gave me a chance to start again. Nalin placed her hand lightly on his arm. And you reminded me that my world is not as empty as I thought. Elias felt the depth of her words. And for a brief moment, he wished he could stay longer. Not because he needed healing anymore, but because he had found a quiet comfort in her presence. But he knew she valued her solitude, and he respected that deeply. That night, they shared a peaceful final meal together. Elias told her small stories from his life. Gentle stories, not heavy ones about his favorite places, old friends, and memories that still made him smile. Nalin listened with interest, her expression soft and thoughtful. Then she shared a few of her own stories, small pieces of her past that she normally kept hidden in her heart. Their words flowed easily, like two people who understood each other without needing to explain everything. When the fire burned low, they watched the stars together in comfortable silence. When morning came, the desert was quiet and still. Elias prepared his horse, while Nalin packed a small bundle of dried herbs and food for his journey. She tied it securely and handed it to him. For strength on the road, she said. He accepted it with deep gratitude. Thank you, Nalin. For everything. Nalin stepped closer, her face calm but warm. Remember this, she said gently. You are capable of kindness, of patience, of peace. Do not forget these things when the world becomes noisy. Elias felt her words settle into his heart like a blessing. He placed a hand over his chest. I won't forget, he promised. He mounted his horse slowly. Before he left, he looked down at Nayland one last time. "If I ever pass this way again," he said softly, "may I stop to see you?" Nayland smiled a small, gentle smile that held a world of meaning. "If the desert guides you here," she said, "my fire will welcome you." Their eyes held each other for a quiet moment. Not longing, not sadness, just deep respect, gratitude, and a connection that would stay with both of them long after they parted. Then Elias turned his horse slowly and began riding across the desert. He didn't rush. He let the morning breeze guide him, feeling stronger with every step his horse took. He looked back once to see Nayland standing by her tent, her hair moving gently with the wind, her figure steady and calm. He raised his hand in farewell. She raised hers in return. As he disappeared into the distance, Nayland stood quietly, watching until he was only a small shape in the wide desert. She felt no loneliness, only a warm, peaceful fullness in her chest. She turned back toward her tent, knowing her life would continue as before, yet somehow changed in the softest, most meaningful way. The desert was still her home. Solitude was still her companion. But now, she carried a new memory, one of kindness shared, trust offered, and two quiet hearts crossing paths at just the right time. Elias rode on with renewed purpose, carrying her wisdom with him, and Nayland returned to her peaceful life, knowing that even in the quietest corners of the world, unexpected connections could bloom like flowers in the sand. Their paths had separated, but the gentle impact they left on each other would stay forever, carried by the wind, the earth, and the quiet heartbeat of the desert.